Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. With the Olympics coming up next month, we are talking to Canadian athletes who are headed to Paris. My next guest's Olympic path hasn't exactly been typical.
Taking in all the glory, and there she is. Malindi Elmore has the 9th place position, a top 10 Olympic finish within her sights.
That was Malindi's goal today, to be top 10. Here she is, 41 years old, 2 boys, and she has just finished 9th place. 17 years after running the 1,500 meter in Athens.
That's Malindi Elmore's finish at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Her first Olympics was in 2004 in the 1,500 meter race. Then, in 2012, she retired. If Ironman races count as retirement, they don't, and we'll get to that in a few moments. She returned to professional racing in 2020, but to a completely different sport, long-distance running, only to smash the Canadian marathon record. And now, at the age of 44, she is headed to Paris for her 3rd Olympic Games. Malindi Elmore joins us now. Malindi, good morning.
Good morning.
As I said, not the typical Olympic athlete trajectory. How does it feel looking back at as to how you got to this moment now?
Well, if you had told me at 20 years old that I'd still be in this sport 24 years later, I think that would be hard to believe. And I certainly, as a younger athlete, would have had a hard time believing I would be a competitive Ironman and marathon runner in my latter career. When I was younger in high school and university, I loved the short distance, middle distance races, the 800 and the 1,500. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been filled with ups and downs, but I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I've had.
How hard was that decision to retire from Olympic competition in 2012?
In 2012, I was feeling really discouraged and really burnt out from the sport. I missed making the 2008 Olympics in the 1,500 by 0.07 seconds. And there was a lot of stuff going on with doping and politics in the sport that was really kind of dragging me down. And then, I decided to put my head down and try and make it in 2012 after being disappointed in 2008 and missed the games again by less than a second. Won national champs Olympic trials, but didn't have the time that I needed to go to the games. And so I just kind of knew I needed to take a step away from the sport and sort of reconnect with myself and why, what I wanted to do in life. And so it was a really great break. I mean, I had my kids and explored triathlon and started a teaching and coaching career. So life has kind of evolved, and then it eventually brought me back to wanting to be competitive again in running.
As you mentioned, I mean, you had your first son after you retired and then got into triathlete world and competing in triathlons. Having felt burnt out, as you said, on the sport, why did you go towards something as difficult as a triathlon?
I think I'm a glutton for punishment. It was fresh and new to try a different sport. And I think sometimes we get stuck in you have to do the same thing mentality. I didn't have a background in swimming, so learning to swim was a steep learning curve for me. And I love riding my bike and running, obviously. And just like, it was, the opportunity to push myself really hard in something else, but also be successful because it was all so new. So that was exciting for a few years. And I really enjoyed it in the process. And I love being competitive and I love being active. But at the end of the day, when I went back to running, I realized that what I love most is running. And so I was spending the whole time getting through a swim and a bike race just to do what I enjoyed the most. And I could just skip the warm up and go straight to running if I switched sports.
What was the Ironman experience like for you?
I really loved Ironman, actually. It's a long day, but it's a really, really amazing day experience.
It seems like the hardest thing that somebody could do.
It pretty much is. Yep. It definitely is. Yeah, I did too. And my first one felt sort of effortless in a way. And I was really thrilled with how it went. And then my second one was kind of the opposite, really. It was just hard all day. And it's, 9 hours of kind of going at your max effort. And but it's a great community and it's pretty fun to, test your limits and see what the body can do.
When did the marathon, I mean, you talked about how the other parts of the triathlon were hard and you loved running. When did the marathon come back into the picture for you? When did you start to think, you know what, this is something that I could give a shot at?
You know what, I actually had no aspirations of getting into competitive marathoning when I decided to switch to marathons, but it was sort of more, again, an evolution. I had my son, he was 3 months old, and I was out running with some friends who were going to run Chicago Marathon, and they were running recreational age group marathon races. And I just thought, I want to go with them. Like, this would be so fun to go to Chicago for the weekend and hang out with my friends. But the baby was young and I was in no fitness to run a marathon. So this was about September. And my husband said, when I came home and said, can I go to Chicago next month and run a marathon? He's like, that's crazy. No, but you could be ready for a marathon in January if you start training now. And he said he'd help me get ready for it because he has some coaching background. And so Graham, my husband, wrote me a training plan to get ready for this marathon in Houston in January. And I went. The baby was 6 months old. Graham came with me, obviously. We weren't leaving the baby home alone or home with family at that point. And I ran it not with huge aspirations, but I completely exceeded my expectations. And I ran 2:32 for my first marathon, which was at that point 2.5 minutes off the Olympic standard, a year out from the Olympics. And we just kind of looked at each other and laughed when I finished the race. And he's like, you got to try for the Olympics now.
What did it, I mean, in your mind, you know how strong you are and you know what you're capable of, but that must have still shocked you.
Yeah, that's actually been one of the best moments I've had in sport, was finishing that race and just really loving everything about the training for it. And the race felt effortless. And here I was, I had everything I wanted in life at that point. I had 2 healthy children. I was returning to running completely on my own terms. I was willing to let go of, the disappointment from the past and just start fresh. And it was pretty exciting thinking, oh, wow, like here I am 39, turning 40. I have the opportunity to get back into sport at a high level and have another shot at it.
And then a year later, you go back to Houston and you finish 3rd overall in what, 2:24.50?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a Canadian, that you beat the Canadian record by more than 2 minutes.
Yeah. That was a great experience.
When you get across the finish line, what did that feel like?
Oh, that was so exhilarating. Yeah, that race was just like, it just all came together. At that point, I had a much better idea than the year prior what I was capable of doing. And we'd had another full year of training. I wasn't still, nursing a baby at the finish line. And just, it was just kind of a perfect day out there in Houston. I remember hitting, mid-race, just before the halfway, and I was in a big pack, and I thought, oh, wow, I feel so great. I feel like I could just do this forever. And this is just like what I'm meant to do. And it was, you don't get those feelings all the time in races. So when you do, it's pretty special.
Can you describe what that feels like? I mean, for people who, there's this idea of flow, right? And for people who do physical activity, there's a moment where you kind of just lose yourself and you're in it and it's happening. But when you're doing it at that level, what does that feel like when everything is working perfectly and you know how fast you're going?
It's a really special feeling, and I think that's what keeps me in the sport. And I think it's probably what people feel when they're, when they are in a deep meditative state, or they're really engrossed in their art or their music or something, and you're just so focused on the task at hand, and you can just really, your mind and your body are working together so well. You've got no other competing thoughts. It's just like this process of everything clicking and feeling effortless, and also knowing you're doing really well. And that it's all going to come together. How
do you celebrate a race like that?
Usually, it's nice to have family around at the finish line. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about Paris, because in Tokyo, of course, family and friends couldn't come to the Olympics. So that was the point when I thought I got to go back to Paris. Being able to have my family, like my children, my husband, my sister, my parents, some friends all coming. So the best way to celebrate really is to go out and, get some burger and beers and enjoy and have some good times for a few hours after the race. And I've got such a great support crew, so it's really nice to be able to share it with them.
I mean, Tokyo, we played a little bit of it at the beginning of the conversation. People who watched that race, I think we're feeling for everybody who was out on the course because it looked so hot and humid. You finished in 9th place. It's the best result for a Canadian woman in the Olympic marathon, but it looked brutal.
It was brutal. Yeah, actually, I was speaking to my children's school yesterday, and that was really fun. And I was talking about the race, and then the vice principal says at the end, "Wow, you're really selling the marathon."
Because you kept saying how terrible it was?
Yeah, basically, and how painful it was. And then I was like, no, but it's still fun. It's still fun to like suffer and to know you did your best. But that race, oh boy, like the last 6 or 8 kilometers just sort of felt like a death march, but everybody felt that way. And we were all just melting out there. But thankfully, I held it together and I crossed the line, and it's really an amazing feeling when you achieve your goal and when your goal is lofty and you do it. And I was really, really quite thrilled to finish in the top 10.
Can you go back to something that you just said, which is it's fun to suffer? Help people understand that. For people who don't do what you do, and what you do, what you run toward is something that a lot of people would say, absolutely not, thank you very much. What is fun about suffering?
I think the thing is it's rewarding knowing you got the most out of yourself and setting big goals and going after them wholeheartedly and putting everything into it on race day and being able to finish a race thinking I could not have done any better. I did everything I could from a preparation perspective and from an execution on the day. And I did my absolute best. I left nothing out there. And I just keep coming back for more for that feeling.
Does it surprise you that you were able to get back to that place? I mean, you were talking about retiring in 2012 and how you felt then. It seems like you have a completely different, not mindset, but a renewed love for what you do now.
Yeah, I think so. I think part of it too is now that I know that if you fail, life goes on and you're still going to be okay. I think at that age and at that time in my life, everything for me rided on my performance. And, when you can take a step back and it's like, I wouldn't change anything in my life now. I've got everything I need. So I can fail and I'm still going to be okay. So I can just focus then on my sport and the process and not the results all the time.
You have a crazy busy life. You're sitting in your car right now. Just explain what you did before you picked up the phone and said hello?
Well, I met some of the athletes that I coach because I coach at UBC Okanagan in Kelowna. I met them this morning at about 6:30 a.m. and we did a workout together. And that took about 2 hours. And my husband met me towards the end of my workout, dropped the children off while I did my cool down around the fields. They're thankfully a little bit older now, so I can actually run around the fields because they're not going to, wander away and disappear. And then he had to go to work, so he had to drop them off to me. And then I got them to school. Unfortunately, a minute late. The bell had just rung when we...
One minute late.
And minutes are everything in this world. And then now I'm waiting to go into the gym to do my weight workout. So I'm just sitting in my car chatting with you because it's 9 a.m. in BC right now.
How do you fit? I mean, this is a question that you could ask anybody, but having just run all that down, how do you fit everything in?
So I don't, to be honest. There's a lot of days I go to bed thinking I did not get everything done I needed to. But isn't that life, right? I think a lot of people feel that way. Just trying to be super organized and manage time really well and be flexible. I have, a 30-minute run this afternoon. And so I will drop my son off at piano lessons and literally run from his piano lesson and show up again, probably a minute late to pick him up. But thankfully, most people are pretty understanding. And just finding like all those little windows of time and opportunity through the day to get things done.
What is it that, at this point, that's motivating you to keep doing this?
Oh, going to Paris has been a huge motivation since I've crossed the line in Tokyo. I think, obviously the race went well from a results perspective, being ninth. And I thought, well, why would I quit now? Why? There's no reason for me to stop. I'm still healthy. I'm still enjoying this. I'm still supported to do this. So my goal immediately shifted to making the Paris Olympics. And we, worked really hard over the next few years to make sure I qualified. I've had some great races between Tokyo and now that I'm really proud of. And it's been really, really motivating to be able to bring my kids to Paris to see me actually race at the Olympics.
I heard you say that you can do this better because of your kids.
Yeah, I think they give me a focus that I maybe didn't have at one point, and they give me a really strong reason for why I'm doing this, because they're, my family has to be on board with this. There's a lot of our family that revolves around my training and racing, but it's not all. Like the kids live a pretty good life. I don't think that they have anything to complain about. But like I said before, I've got these windows of opportunity to train. I have to prioritize my training to still be able to balance being a good parent and being a good community member, that sort of thing. And when it comes down to it, in the really tough, dark moments in the marathon, I think about them and wanting to make them proud and wanting to be the role model that I want to be for my kids.
What did your son say to you when you told him that you'd qualified for the Olympics?
Oh, he said, Mom, they couldn't find anyone faster, hey? I said, well, Charlie, it's kind of a big deal to make the Olympics. He's like, well, Mom, this is your third time. It's not that big a deal.
Hard to impress.
Like, yeah, okay, you're right. And then he goes, did you bring me a snack? I'm hungry. All right, here we go.
Let's get to the important stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned age. Let me just ask you about age a couple of times, because you mentioned it a couple of times as well. And you said that when you retired from track at the age of 32, you felt old. You're 44. You're not old now. I just wonder how you feel now.
Yeah, I think I've just stopped paying attention to the number and the birthday. And I think that, there's a trade-off. Like with age brings maybe different perspective on life and different perspective on yourself and a better understanding of yourself. And so all the things that I spoke about just like being way more process oriented now than maybe just focused on the result as I had to be in my 20s, but I was quote unquote failing to achieve what I wanted to achieve. I think that's really helped me a lot as an athlete. And I definitely cannot run as fast or powerfully as I could when I was younger. When I was running 1500, I would hate to race my former self over 400 meters, but I'm way stronger aerobically than I was when I was younger. And that just comes with years of doing sport and showing up and being consistent. So I know I would, if you line myself up as a 1500 meter runner to now over the course of 20 years, just way really, maybe not as fast, but way stronger over distances. And that's everything in the marathon.
It makes us rethink in some ways. I mean, people have kind of an idea of when somebody is old in sport. And as we all get older and we want to stay active, you that runs through your head. But what you've been able to do, I think, kind of pulls the plug on something like that.
I think we're just seeing a lot of people in their beyond maybe their peak years still have really amazing performances. And it's not like it just ends and it's like a cliff that you fall off. Like you just keep showing up and working hard and, being the best athlete you can be. And I'm seeing some amazing things from athletes in their 40s and even really into their late 40s, 50s now. There's an Australian woman who's one of my big role models. She set the Australian national record last year at 46 and 2:21, and she's lining up this year. She'll be in Paris, and she's at least 47 this year. So who's to say that there's a limit on age?
What is your goal for Paris, or what are your goals for Paris?
Definitely top 10 again I'd be thrilled with that. And I will never give up the dream of winning an Olympic medal at some point. And this might be the last point. Who knows? So if the opportunity presents and I run the race of my life, you just never know. And I wouldn't count myself out.
I would be a fool, I think, to count you out. And I think anybody who does is not paying attention. You're amazing. And we will be cheering you along. It's great to talk to you, and good luck and thanks.
Thanks so much, Matt. Have a great day.
Malindi Elmore will represent Canada at the marathon event in Paris at the Olympics. In the lead up to the Olympics next month, we are speaking with a number of Canadian athletes who will be flying the flag, and we will continue to do that in the weeks to come here on the program.